Thank you very much, Pamela, and thank all of you for coming today. I'm delighted to be with you, and I hope that the conference today will change your life, change your family's life, change America. I want to thank Governor Gary Herbert for being here today. I'm honored that he would take time. I'm particularly honored that he would sit in the front row of my talk because he can hardly just get up and go. I thank for his wife for having made him governor, as well as for being here today. I met a wonderful state representative, Ron Bigelow, yesterday, had dinner with him last night. You're very, very fortunate with the political leaders that you have. I want to thank the board of directors of the Utah Coalition for having me here and for all that you do in the fight against pornography. Attorney John Harmer, I admire everything you do. He is chairman of the Lighted Candle Society and has had he's been a wonderful success story. At the same time, in praising your political leaders, I think you've probably seen on the news that not everyone in the country is quite so happy with their political leaders. And it reminds me of the story that Ronald Reagan used to always tell when he went around the country. He'd say the most frightening words that people can hear is, "I'm from Washington and I'm here to help." So I was introduced as being from Washington, D.C., and I am here to help you today. The introduction was nice from Pamela, and by the way, you're so fortunate to have her in this community and for all the work that she's done. But the introduction reminded me a little bit about one that I got in the city of Baltimore one time when I was with the Department of Justice, and I was invited up after work to give a speech, and at the time I had younger children, and you know what it's like, you've got to get home and help them with homework and all this. So when I went up to give my talk, the lady had this long document with all this material, and she was wondering how you pronounce this case and that case, and I said, wait a minute, are you thinking of reading my whole bio? And she said, well, I thought I'd give you your due. And I said, look, I'm in a hurry to get home to my family. Make it as brief as possible, and I'll fill in what is necessary, but please just be brief. And so she got up to the podium to introduce me, and she said, our guest tonight is Patrick Trueman from the United States Department of Justice. No man in America is more familiar with pornography than Mr. Trueman. I talked about those politicians and the unhappiness that prevails in the country about some, and I'm reminded of the old political saying that goes around Washington, D.C., and it is that the most important thing in politics is sincerity. And once you learn to fake that, you've got it made. Well, you're fortunate, as I said, to have leaders here in Utah who aren't just run-of-the-mill politicians, people like your governor and Representative Bigelow and so many others. And I'd like to read a letter from another person who has, as Joe Biden would say, has your back. Someone who is always in the front lines of the battle to protect morality in America, someone who I have admired for many, many years. And I'm working with his office right now on a very important project. And that is Senator Orrin Hatch. Senator Hatch, his staff person, when he heard this week that I was coming out here to kick off the convention, asked if they could send a letter from Senator Hatch and asked him to put that together. And I want to read that to you. He says, congratulations to the Utah Coalition Against Pornography on your 2010 convention. Your theme this year is so important because pornography is not simply morally wrong or in a bad taste, it is harmful to individuals, families, and communities. We must change the way citizens, legislators, and courts look at this scourge upon our country. That's so important to understand. Your kickoff keynote speaker, Pat Trueman, is a real leader in this effort, and I did not write this letter. I ask Pat to pass along my commitment to continue working with groups like yours and with leaders like him in this never-ending fight. We must work to get the right laws in the books and then make sure that those laws are enforced. Now, that is what I'm going to talk about. I have confronted administrations of both political parties about the failure to make this a priority issue and to devote sufficient resources to the growing problem of illegal pornography. I will continue to do so. Exposure to pornography and obscenity harms children morally, physically, and spiritually. Addiction to this material devastates the human spirit, distorts how individuals relate to each other, and contributes to the breakup of marriages. It is a contributing factor in rape, the sexual exploitation of children, sexual trafficking, sexual harassment, and even the decline of worker productivity. This must truly be a comprehensive effort. I promise to continue my leadership in the Senate, and I know you will do so at the grassroots level. I want to commend Pat on his bold new initiative called the War on Illegal Pornography. With the support of national and state pro-family organizations and thousands of concerned citizens across America, this cutting-edge project will help educate everyone about the terrible harm from pornography and demand that the federal government enforce the laws against illegal pornography. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in this great work. Utah has always been a leader in the fight against illegal pornography, and I know that working together we can make our wonderful state and this great country safe for children and families. Signed, United States Senator Orrin Hatch. Well, I'm glad that he mentioned the war on illegal pornography. The pornographers have been warring against you and your family for decades. And it's a war that has hardly been fought. People do not even know today what the law is on illegal pornography. Do you know that when you go into a hotel that has that pay-per-view hardcore pornography, that is a violation of federal law? Do you know that under federal law, the owner of that hotel, Conrad Hilton Jr. himself, or whoever is the owner of that chain, can be put in jail for 5, 10, 15 years, can be fined $250,000, and the property on which that hardcore pornography is shown can be confiscated by the United States government. Do you know the same is true with cable and satellite television? Comcast, DirecTV, all these companies that provide pay-per-view hardcore pornography, that is illegal under federal law, and they can lose their satellite. We had a case when I was chief of the Justice Department effort. It emanated right out here in Utah by your United States attorney. And at the time, there was only one satellite pornographer in the United States distributing hardcore pornography. And the United States attorney here sent a subpoena to GTE, the owner of that satellite, and they sent in Brendan Sullivan. That's a name you might remember. He's the top criminal defense lawyer in Washington, D.C., sent him in to see the United States attorney to say, we've cut that pornographer off. We didn't know we could lose our satellite. We didn't know this was against the law for us. And no more was there any hardcore pornography available in this country on satellite. That's been a few years, as you know. Did you know that retail stores that carry hardcore pornography, the garden variety material, I'm not just talking about animals and sex, I'm talking about just garden variety, hardcore pornography, material that shows actual sexual acts or even simulated sexual acts, or under federal law, mere lascivious exhibition of the genital area. That material is a violation of federal law if it has come across state lines into your house, into your community, I mean. That is what federal law prohibits. Did you know that what's on the internet that's hardcore pornography, and it's all hardcore pornography today, that is a violation of federal law? And yet, in the Obama administration, the FBI, the Chief Investigative Office for illegal hardcore pornography, which is called obscene material in federal law, they've stopped investigating hardcore pornography, and told the Department of Justice, we're not going to do that in the Obama administration. And the Justice Department itself hasn't complained. So far, they don't want to do these cases. Now, the chief prosecutor for illegal pornography, the head of the Obscenity Prosecution Task Force at the Department of Justice, is a wonderful man who wants to do hardcore pornography prosecutions and vigorously prosecute this. He would put those companies out of business. He's from right here in Utah. Brent Ward, your former United States attorney, an upstanding, good man, one of my close friends, and they've got him wrapped up, tight as a drum, won't let him prosecute. Is that why you got those laws on illegal pornography passed by Congress? And what is Congress doing? Not much. A few, like Orrin Hatch, are doing something. The United States Supreme Court has said time and time again when faced with pornography cases that the public has a right to a decent society. And that's why they've upheld illegal pornography laws. Instead of prosecuting, we lionize people in this country who are the pornographers. Hugh Hefner, Larry Flint. If you only knew the inside story of the lives of these two men, I think it would make you vomit. Hugh Hefner, who claims to live the life that's a dream for any man, his life is a total mess. He is a poster boy for addiction to pornography. As you know, he's been divorced twice. He wanted to live this lifestyle where anything goes, lots of girlfriends, lots of pornography. But pornography has so taken over his life, he couldn't be satisfied with one woman, not two women, not 1,000 women. He couldn't be satisfied when he got married late in life. You heard about that. He couldn't sustain his marriage, and even today, the inside story of Hugh Hefner, and I'm not going to detail it for you, is that he can't be satisfied with any woman. His mind is so taken over by pornography. And Larry Flint, Hollywood lionized him, put a movie out. He's the great defender of the First Amendment. His own daughter accused him of raping her. That's the heroes of the pornography industry. Who are the pornographers? It's not just Hugh Hefner and Larry Flint. Today it might be the man right next door to you. Because today, in today's pornographic world with the internet, men are creating their own pornography. They're putting it on these websites where you can actually upload films of actual amateur hardcore pornography. And they're getting material from throughout the world on the internet, putting it together and distributing it. These men are devoting hour by hour of their time looking at hardcore pornography, and they look out their window and they see your daughter sunbathing out in the back. What do they think? They see your kids going to school. Today, the pornographer might be the 14-year-old girl right across the street in a new trend called sexting. I don't like that term at all. Sexting is kids using their computer or their cell phone, taking pictures of themselves and distributing it to others. And they not only distribute it to their boyfriends and girlfriends, they distribute it to boys they want to get to meet. Now, think about what sexting is. It's got a sexy title, but what is sexting today? Sexting is children producing and distributing child pornography. Did you ever think that in the United States of America, the production of child pornography by children would be routine, and yet it is? When I was prosecuting at the Department of Justice, a child pornographer, when you would uncover these people, they were sleazy pedophiles collecting child pornography. Today, there's no wall on that internet. If you make up your mind to go on the internet and begin looking at pornography, you will almost immediately find child pornography. I'm not talking about 5-year-old kids. But because of sexting and these other trends among kids today, kids are uploading their own pictures. of themselves having sex with their boyfriends, their girlfriends. Children are uploading pictures of themselves or their girlfriends. A 14-year-old boy breaks up with his girlfriend. What does he do with the sex pictures that she's been sending him? He's mad at her. They go up on the internet. They go all around the high school. Child pornography is a very serious offense. We put people away for lifetimes for that. Federal law gives you a minimum sentence of 5 years. You might get 25 years. You might get 30 years. And if you collect enough of it, you might get a lifetime sentence. And yet, I've seen editorials when the topic of sexting is brought up that say that this is just the way children communicate with one another today. And I remember Robert Bork writing in his book, Slouching Towards Gomorrah, where he talks about the drip, drip, drip of immorality, where something shocks us, but pretty soon it's commonplace. And that's what child pornography is in America today. I've seen editorials by some saying, stop prosecuting kids for child pornography. Now, frankly, I don't think federal law fits the case of your 14-year-old daughter when she makes the mistake of taking up pictures of herself in a mirror, full nudity, and sends it to her boyfriend. That's going to shock you when you find out she's done that. But I don't think she should get put away in prison for 5, 10, 15 years. We do need some adjustments. Most of those kids are going to be prosecuted in juvenile court. But I don't agree that we should say it's just the way kids communicate today. You have to do something very harsh to those children, because the first kid in your son or daughter's high school that's caught producing and distributing child pornography, if something major happens to them, that practice will stop. It doesn't stop because not much is done about it in America today. A couple years ago, a book came on the market called Oral Sex, The New Goodnight Kiss. And it's a Canadian book. And I was shocked seeing the promo on the internet where they interviewed some of these children, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, and they talk about it as no big deal. Everybody does it. They have sex parties fueled by pornography. And in a closed room, the girls take turns servicing the boys in high school. You think that goes on just in Canada? That goes on here. And I know the reason it goes on here and around the world, and you do too. These boys don't just get in their mind to go over to a girl's house for a party after the basketball game and enjoy sex. They're fueled on pornography today. Kids are getting on the internet at very early ages. By the time they're out of grade school and in early high school, it becomes a steady diet. Kids on college campuses devour this material hour by hour by hour. And the sad truth is, the girls, who normally are not excited by this kind of material, comport with the men. You go back and look at the issue of sexting. Why do girls do it? There was one magazine that did a survey last year of 9 to 15-year-old girls. Why do you distribute, or ask first, have you ever distributed or taken pornographic pictures of yourself? 30% said yes. Had either sent or received such material. Why do they do it? 82% said they do it to get attention. Are our children today so starved for attention that they would produce child pornography, starring in it themselves, and send that anonymously to kids that they want to meet or among their friends or to their boyfriends? 66% said they do it because it's cool. 60% said they want to be like the popular girls. And that implies that the popular girls do this on a regular basis. And 55% said they produce and distribute child pornography of themselves to find a boyfriend. My, how things have changed. What we've seen is a taboo that is broken. And you know that. People who are involved in child pornography used to be, as I said, those sleazy, dirty old men. We've broken the taboo, and now it is so commonplace. Pornography leads also to prostitution. I've seen this with my own eyes. A friend of mine invited me to come up when I was at the Department of Justice to see the tragedy of child prostitution in New York City, and I didn't believe him. But we went at 2 a.m. in the Meat Market District in New York City, where cars are lined up. It is a traffic jam to get in there. Lining the streets are kids, 14, 15, 16, 17. By the time they're 21 or 22, nobody wants them. Kids lining the streets and cars dragging these kids into their car, having sex and moving on. Who are these kids? A lot of them are out-of-state kids. They're in a college nearby. They come and have sex with a child. A lot of them are adults. We were following one SUV where one of the girls looked so young. She had to be 14, 13 maybe. The boys dragged her into the back of the SUV, parked the vehicle, one after another, having sex. We have in America today a crisis in child prostitution. 250,000 children is the common number that we hear are involved in commercial sex. Who are the people who are having sex with them? I know one thing about them, and you know one thing about them. A man doesn't just go out someday and say, I'm going to have sex with a child. What drives that man is the consumption of pornography. Many of you saw the NBC Dateline show To Catch a Predator. And if you didn't, this was a sting operation that ABC conducted with a group and law enforcement, and they do it in community after community after community. And they would take an older girl, 18 or 19, who would be on the on the internet, getting in chat rooms and other places, letting people know that she was 13 or 14 years old. And let me tell you, when you begin to get in a chat room as a 13 or 14-year-old girl, as soon as you get in there, you are targeted by predators. She'd get in there and men would start talking to her about sex almost immediately. And not one or two, but lots of them. So she'd carry on these individual conversations with these people in this sting operation. And she would say, as part of this television show, my parents aren't home tonight. Let's get together. After she's told that individual how old she is, that's part of the sting, that she's a 13-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl. And then she'll say to the guy, what would you like to do? Because the law enforcement wants to get the guy on record so they can convict him. And the man will begin describing sex acts that he wants to perform. And then the show takes you to the location of this home that's rented by NBC, filled with law enforcement people hiding, and Chris Hansen, the host of this show. And one after another will come in with presents for the girl, along with condoms, other sex toys. And then Chris Hansen will come out and say, what were you thinking about doing here? What was this all about? And of course, one after another, they're there to have sex. And you know what they all say when they're caught? They say, oh, I've never done this before. This is my first time. Now, that's not true. They're having sex with 13 and 14-year-old girls because those girls across America are in no short supply on the internet. And I've talked to parent after parent, and I've read about them, and you've read about them. They are shocked that their daughter could have done such a thing. But they let that daughter have her own computer in her own room and no supervision, no blocking software on that computer. In thinking about internet pornography, when I've tried to put it in proper perspective, my observation is that internet pornography is the sexual revolution times 1,000. There are many of you who survived the sexual revolution, and it was a real revolution in our day. As you can tell, I'm a little older. I'm not going to run through all the statistics about how many kids and how many adults are on pornography and what it's like are on the internet looking at pornography, what it's like on college campuses where the kids have the TV in the room and they get porn movie after porn movie and they invite the girls in, and the boys are spending hour by hour. But what we do need to know is, what's the big deal about pornography? What does it do to us? And I keep hearing, as I debate this issue with many, many people, that pornography is harmful. The pornography is something that changes our brain. It actually hijacks our brain. I read a wonderful book a year and a half ago by Dr. Norman Dodge. He's a medical psychiatrist, and he wrote the best-selling book, The Brain That Changes Himself. And he talks about the plasticity of the brain. That is, the brain is very plastic, and it can change. And it changes rapidly. We used to think the brain is set in stone. No, it's not. If you cut off your right hand and your left hand will take over that brain map and make you more proficient. If you go blind, you'll be able to hear better because the brain adjusts itself. If that's my wife, tell her I'll be there in a minute. But Dr. Dodge also talks about how the brain has an extraordinary degree of sexual plasticity. And he details how the brain has two pleasure systems. One pleasure system is dopamine related and the other is endorphin related. And when you're going out to dinner with your wife at your favorite restaurant, you get excited about that. That's dopamine fueling that excitement. And when you're finished with the meal, you don't just get up and go to the next favorite restaurant and have another meal, and then another one after that, because endorphins kick in. And that's another pleasure system. You get the satisfaction, and it's the same thing with a couple having relations. You get the dopamine of excitement, you get the endorphin of satisfaction. But with pornography, you only get the dopamine. You don't get the endorphin pleasure system. With pornography hijacks the brain, and you only get the excitement but never the satisfaction. So you're never, ever, ever satisfied. And that's why a man can get on the computer or a boy can get on the computer and they begin looking at the Playboy models, and that satisfies them for about 10 minutes because there's something else there. And they'll look at another genre of pornography and another. And believe me, if you start plugging in the word pornography, and don't do that, in a Google search, you'll find one after another fetish and different people involved and et cetera, et cetera. And men and boys and women will deviate down to harder and harder material because that material that once excited them doesn't excite them anymore. Hugh Hefner said he is so thankful for the most important invention of his time, and that's Viagra, because he can't get excited by all that he has seen, and he never will. And that's the same way with people involved with pornography. Pamela Atkinson and I were on a radio show, Call-In, last night, and the host only allowed 2 callers. Both of them were addicted to pornography. That second caller, who was 42 years old, was crying at the end of the time he was telling his tale of how he was addicted to pornography as a boy and couldn't give it up. It ruined 2 of his marriages. The second caller was 21. I got addicted at age 13, he said. Now, he's not the exception. When I do these shows, whenever I talk to audiences with kids, they come up afterwards and they talk about, how do I get out of this? You know, we do a lot of work preparing our kids for college. Why do we do that? We want them to have the right experience because this is going to affect them for the rest of our lives. Maybe we should sit down with our kids at age 10 and tell them the truth. You are going to be involved with pornography. And here's some of the things you're going to see. And because of your involvement with pornography, you'll never be able to have a relationship like your mother and I had and have a family, because you'll never be satisfied with your wife. You'll never be satisfied with your kids. You won't be able to hold a job down right because you'll spend too much time in destroyed productivity by looking at pornography. Now, I spend a lot of time with my 18-year-old Claire preparing her for colleges, but I don't spend anywhere near the time that these people are spending on the issue of pornography, that people should be spending on the issue of pornography, preparing your kids. And of course, what I just told you is not how we should approach it with our kids. If you want to do the system right, you would tell your kids that there are terrible things that are on the internet. And God made sex to be one beautiful thing, only reserved for marriage. But now, people are destroying that concept with pornography. And that's why, because we love you, we're going to make sure that this computer doesn't offer you that destruction that destroys so many people. We're lucky to have a couple people here today from NetNanny, the leading software that will protect your family from pornography. And if you're a parent and you don't have that child's computer monitored and blocked from this kind of material, you might as well say to your kids, anything goes, because we don't love you enough to protect you. I often think, what is more damaging to a child, a handgun or the family computer? You know, with a handgun, I'm not recommending this, it may not be loaded. That computer's loaded, it's loaded to the hilt. With a child, they may miss. Pornography doesn't miss. It goes right to the brain and knows what to do when it gets there. That boy that was 21 years old on the phone last night didn't know that when he began looking at pornography, that he was signing up for a lifetime of destruction. I am telling you all this because we need a war on illegal pornography in America. We deserve to have those laws that we got enacted enforced. We need our politicians, from the president, the legislators in Congress, the governor, your attorney general, your state legislators, we need them engaged in the war on illegal pornography. And we need to be engaged in the war on illegal pornography, not just illegal pornography, but any pornography. Softcore pornography is the quick gateway to hardcore pornography. We need to politely tell those hotels that we stay in that we don't appreciate that they have hardcore pornography in the rooms. You need to say that to that retail convenience store. You need to say that to your cable and satellite company and find some protection against this material for your family. We saw what happened to smoking in America. You notice nobody here is lighting up. When I used to go to conferences 20 years ago, people would be lighting up. But why don't they do it today? Because smoking stinks. It stunk back then, but people now say that. They're willing to step out and proclaim that there is something wrong with that. It is a bad habit. And we need to make pornography understood to be, in America, a bad habit. We need to make it intolerable in our lives, in our communities, on college campuses. We need to let our legislators, our leaders, political leaders know that we find pornography, and the content analysis of pornography today shows it is primarily violence against women, and that's what your kids think mommy and daddy are all about when they close the door to the bedroom at night because they're getting their sex education today. We need to let society know that is unacceptable and educate our children about the harm and educate them about what will happen to them if they cross that line. Jesus said that if a man so much as looks at a woman with lust, he has committed adultery with her in his heart. But pornography, as I look at it, and I'm sure this is the way God looks at it, pornography is more than adultery, as if that isn't bad enough. Pornography is idolatry. A man spending 5 or 6 hours at night looking at pornography on that internet, going to work the next day, stealing time away from his job, looking at it on his cell phone, that is the kind of devotion that is reserved to God alone. We often tell people, let Christ take over your life. That's my goal for me. But what about the fellow who's trapped in pornography, letting pornography take over his life for hours? Women, imagine if your husband would devote to you hour by hour of a day, looking at you and appreciating you and loving you face to face versus what is happening on the computer. That kind of devotion there, if it were transferred to a wife, not in a sexual way, but real devotion. Pornography is a thief. It steals our marriages, it steals our work life, it steals your family life, and it steals your spiritual life. St. Paul writes about this in his letter to the Romans, chapter 1, verses 23 and following. He warns that as our sinful actions become habitual, so does our denial of God. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a war on pornography in America. If you leave this conference today and you just agree to talk to your friends, but don't agree to take up arms, I think the conference is a failure. We've had that happen in America over the last 15, 16 years. Would you decide today to let your public officials know we want our laws enforced? Virtually every state has good laws. We have good laws passed by Congress. If you leave this conference today and you don't say something to your children, you don't examine your household to see how pornography is getting to them through their cell phone, through that computer, and do something about it, I think that we are failing our society. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will take up arms today in the war against pornography. Thank you, and God bless you.